The sprawling parking lot stretched before the gleaming headquarters of TechnoCore Industries, one of the nation's largest technology conglomerates. At 6:15 on this crisp Tuesday evening, waves of employees streamed toward their vehicles, briefcases, and coffee cups in hand, eager to escape another demanding day. The autumn air carried the familiar sounds of car doors slamming and engines purring to life. Near the center of the lot, a sleek black Mercedes-Benz suddenly lurched to a halt, its engine coughing violently before falling silent. Steam began rising from beneath the hood like an angry dragon awakening from slumber. The driver's door swung open with force, revealing Victoria Hartwell, 36 years old, immaculately dressed in a charcoal business suit that cost more than most people earned in a month. Victoria stepped onto the asphalt, her designer heels clicking sharply against the pavement. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a perfect chignon, not a strand out of place despite the crisis unfolding before her. She was accustomed to commanding rooms full of executives, to making decisions that affected thousands of employees, to having every problem solved with a single phone call. But now, surrounded by a growing crowd of curious onlookers, she found herself facing a mechanical failure that threatened to shatter her carefully constructed image of invincibility. The employees began gathering in a loose circle, some pulling out their phones, others whispering among themselves. Victoria's jaw tightened as she realized she was becoming the center of unwanted attention. Her reputation as the ice-cold CEO who had climbed to the top through ruthless determination preceded her wherever she went. She had built her empire by never showing weakness, never admitting defeat, and certainly never asking for help. Just then, a man in oil-stained work clothes walked past the edge of the crowd, his calloused hand gently holding that of a 7-year-old girl with pigtails and a bright yellow backpack. Marcus Johnson, 38 years old, kept his eyes downcast as he tried to navigate around the commotion. His clothes bore the honest stains of hard work, his hands showed the calluses of someone who made his living with tools and determination. Little Sophia looked up at her father with wide, curious eyes. She had learned to read the world through his expressions, to understand when it was time to be quiet and when it was safe to ask questions. Today had been a good day at school, and she was excited to tell him about the drawing she had made of the two of them standing in front of a house with a white picket fence. Victoria's sharp eyes caught sight of Marcus attempting to slip by unnoticed. Something about his humble appearance, his obvious desire to avoid confrontation, triggered a cruel impulse that she rarely bothered to suppress. Her voice cut through the evening air like a blade, stopping conversations mid-sentence and drawing every eye in the vicinity. "You there," she called out, her tone dripping with condescension. "You look like you know your way around an engine. What do you think you're dealing with here?" Marcus paused, his shoulders tensing slightly. He had encountered this type of person before, had learned to recognize the particular brand of arrogance that came with wealth and power. Sophia squeezed his hand tighter, sensing the shift in the atmosphere around them. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I'm just trying to get my daughter home," Marcus replied quietly, his voice steady but cautious. Victoria's laugh was sharp and theatrical, designed to entertain her growing audience. "Oh, come now. Surely someone with such experienced hands can diagnose a simple car problem. Or are you only good for changing oil and rotating tires?" The crowd began to murmur, some employees pulling out their phones to record what was quickly becoming an unexpected evening spectacle. Victoria fed off their attention, her confidence growing with each passing second. "Tell you what," she continued, her voice rising so everyone could hear. "If you can get this engine running in the next 15 minutes, I'll marry you right here on the spot. How's that for motivation?" The laughter that erupted from the crowd was immediate and cruel. Several employees began whooping and encouraging the scene, treating it like impromptu entertainment after a long day at the office. Someone in the back shouted, "This is better than anything on television," while another voice added, "Get your phones ready, people." Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks, but he kept his expression neutral. He had learned long ago that dignity was something that had to be protected from the inside out, that no amount of public humiliation could strip it away unless he allowed it. He glanced down at Sophia, whose eyes were wide with a mixture of concern and confusion. "Daddy, what's happening?" she whispered. "It's okay, sweetheart," he murmured back. Sometimes adults say things they don't really mean. But Victoria wasn't finished. She sensed his discomfort and pressed her advantage like a predator scenting wounded prey. "What's wrong? Cat got your tongue? Or maybe you're realizing that talking big and actually knowing what you're doing are two different things?" The crowd's energy was building, feeding off the drama unfolding before them. Phones were now openly recording, capturing every word and gesture for posterity. Someone had already started live streaming the encounter, providing commentary like a sports announcer calling a boxing match. Marcus looked at the steaming Mercedes, then back at Victoria's expectant face. He could walk away right now, take Sophia's hand and disappear into the crowd. Let this moment fade into the evening shadows. It would be the safe choice, the smart choice, the choice that would protect both him and his daughter from further embarrassment. But something deeper stirred within him, something that had been building for months of similar encounters, years of being looked through rather than at, decades of having his worth measured by the cleanliness of his clothes, rather than the quality of his character. He thought about all the times Sophia had watched him back down from confrontation, all the moments when he had chosen silence over standing up for himself. 15 minutes, he said quietly, releasing Sophia's hand. Victoria's eyebrows shot up in surprise. She had expected him to slink away, tail between his legs, providing her with a clean victory and an amusing story to share at dinner parties. His acceptance of the challenge threw her off balance, but only momentarily. Well, she said, recovering quickly. Looks like we have ourselves a genuine David versus Goliath situation here, folks. The question is, does our hero actually have a slingshot, or just delusions of grandeur? Marcus approached the Mercedes slowly, his trained eye already beginning to assess the situation. The crowd pressed closer, forming a tight circle around the vehicle. The energy was electric, anticipatory, like spectators gathering around a street performer or a fight about to break out. He lifted the hood, and a fresh wave of steam billowed out, carrying with it the distinct smell of overheated coolant and burning oil. The engine bay was a maze of high-end components, German engineering at its finest, but Marcus had spent enough years working on vehicles to recognize the universal language of mechanical failure. Clock's ticking, Victoria announced, checking her diamond-encrusted watch with theatrical precision. 14 minutes and 30 seconds. Sophia pressed closer to the circle, trying to see her father through the wall of adult bodies. Her heart was beating fast, the way it did during scary movies, or when she had to give presentations at school. She wanted to call out to him, to tell him it was okay if he couldn't fix it, but something about the silence of the crowd told her this was a moment for watching, not speaking. Marcus's hands moved with practiced efficiency, checking connections, testing components, following the logical path of diagnosis that had been drilled into him through years of experience. The crowd grew quieter as they watched him work, his movements confident and purposeful despite the pressure of their scrutinizing gazes. Victoria found herself studying his face, looking for signs of panic or desperation that would confirm her initial assessment of him. Instead, she saw concentration, methodical thinking, the kind of focused attention that she recognized from her own boardroom negotiations. It was unsettling in a way she couldn't quite articulate. The memory hit Marcus suddenly, transported him back 30 years to his father's garage in Detroit. 8-year-old Marcus standing on a wooden crate, watching James Johnson's weathered hands move through an engine bay with the precision of a surgeon, explaining each component with patience and pride. "You see, son," his father's voice echoed across the decades, "every engine tells you exactly what's wrong with it. You just have to know how to listen." James Johnson had been a master mechanic, the kind of craftsman who could diagnose problems by sound alone, who could feel a car's pulse through his fingertips. He had dreamed of opening his own shop, of building something lasting that he could pass down to his son. But dreams had a way of colliding with reality in neighborhoods, where opportunities were scarce and setbacks were abundant. Marcus remembered the night his father came home with slumped shoulders and empty pockets, the night the bank had foreclosed on their small garage. He remembered watching his hero pack away his tools. Taking a job at the Ford plant, where creativity was sacrificed for steady paychecks and predictable hours. "Promise me something, Marcus," his father had said that night, his calloused hand resting on his son's shoulder. "Promise me you'll never stop believing in what these hands can do." The promise had carried Marcus through high school, through technical college, through the early years of his marriage when he and Sarah had dreamed of their own garage, their own business, their own piece of the American dream. But life had other plans. Sarah's illness, the medical bills, the long nights spent caring for her while still trying to make ends meet. After Sarah's death, the dream had seemed impossibly distant. Single parenthood had demanded a different set of priorities, a different kind of strength. Sophia needed stability, routine, security. She needed a father who came home every night, who could help with homework and attend school plays, who could provide the emotional anchor that her mother's absence had taken away. So Marcus had taken whatever work he could find. Maintenance jobs, repair work, temporary positions that paid the bills but never quite built towards something bigger. He had told himself it was temporary, that once Sophia was older, once they were more settled, he would pursue the dream that his father had passed down to him. But watching Sophia grow, seeing her bright smile and curious questions, he had begun to realize that she was his dream now. Every sacrifice was worth it if it meant she could sleep safely in her bed, if she could attend a good school, if she could grow up knowing that she was loved and valued regardless of what the world might try to tell her. Now, standing in this parking lot with dozens of strangers watching his every move, Marcus felt the weight of that promise to his father, the weight of being Sophia's hero, the weight of proving that worth wasn't measured by bank account balances or job titles. 10 minutes left, Victoria announced, but her voice had lost some of its earlier mockery. She was beginning to sense that this man wasn't the easy target she had assumed him to be. Marcus's fingers found the problem. A loose connection in the coolant system, exacerbated by a failing thermostat that had caused the engine to overheat. It was the kind of issue that looked catastrophic to the untrained eye but was actually quite manageable with the right knowledge and tools. The only problem was tools. His basic kit was in his truck, parked 3 blocks away where the free street parking began. The Mercedes would need specific components, particular connections, the kind of precision work that required more than good intentions and experienced hands. He looked around the circle of faces, all waiting for him to fail, to confirm their assumptions about people like him. But then his eyes found Sophia, her small face pressed between 2 adults, her expression filled with absolute faith in her father's abilities. Marcus smiled at her, a quiet, confident smile that she had seen 1,000 times before. It was the smile that appeared when he fixed her broken toys, when he patched holes in her favorite jeans, when he turned everyday problems into minor victories through patience and skill. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small multi-tool, the kind of compact device that experienced mechanics carried everywhere. It wasn't much, but it was something. He began working with methodical precision, using the tool's various attachments to address the immediate problems while improvising solutions for the more complex issues. The crowd pressed closer, their earlier mockery giving way to genuine curiosity. Several people began providing commentary to their phone cameras, describing what they were witnessing to virtual audiences who were tuning in from around the world. "He's actually doing something," one voice whispered. "Look at how he moves his hands," another observed. "He knows exactly what he's looking for." Victoria found herself drawn into the drama, despite her initial intentions. She had expected quick failure, easy humiliation, a simple confirmation of her worldview that separated people like her from people like him. Instead, she was watching something that resembled expertise, maybe even artistry. Marcus worked in silence, his concentration absolute. He had learned to tune out distractions, to focus entirely on the mechanical puzzle before him. Each connection tested, each component evaluated, each potential solution weighed against available resources and time constraints. The thermostat was the key. It was stuck partially closed, preventing proper coolant circulation and causing the engine to overheat. With the right tools, it would be a 20-minute job. With what he had available, it would require creativity and a bit of luck. He began working on the housing, using the multi-tools pliers to carefully manipulate the mechanism while monitoring the coolant levels and checking for additional leaks. The work was delicate, requiring the kind of touch that came only from years of experience. 5 minutes, Victoria called out, but her voice had lost its edge. She was no longer playing to the crowd. She was genuinely curious about whether he could pull this off. Sophia had managed to push closer to the front of the circle, her small hands gripping the pants leg of a stranger who had kindly allowed her to squeeze past. She watched her father's every movement with rapt attention, her lips moving silently in what might have been a prayer or simply words of encouragement too quiet for anyone else to hear. Marcus made one final adjustment, checked his connections, and stepped back from the engine bay. The crowd held its collective breath as he moved around to the driver's side door, his hand hovering over the ignition. "This is it, folks," someone whispered into their phone. Moment of truth. Marcus looked across the parking lot and found Sophia's eyes. She nodded at him, a tiny gesture of encouragement that carried more weight than all the doubt and skepticism surrounding them. He thought about his father, about Sarah, about all the moments in his life when he had been underestimated and overlooked. He turned the key. The engine turned over once, twice, and then roared to life with a healthy, powerful sound that cut through the evening air like a declaration of victory. The hood vibrated slightly as the Mercedes settled into a smooth idle, steam no longer rising, all systems functioning exactly as they should. The parking lot erupted. The crowd's reaction was instantaneous and overwhelming. Cheers, applause, and shouts of amazement filled the air as people who had come expecting to witness failure instead found themselves celebrating an unexpected triumph. Phones were thrust higher into the air, capturing every angle of Marcus's quiet victory. Sophia broke free from the crowd and ran to her father, her small arms wrapping around his waist as she looked up at him with shining eyes. "I knew you could do it, Daddy," she whispered, her voice filled with pride and love. Marcus lifted her into his arms, holding her close as the chaos continued around them. This moment wasn't about the car or the challenge or even Victoria's cruel dare. It was about Sophia seeing her father succeed, witnessing firsthand that being underestimated didn't diminish one's actual worth. Victoria stood frozen beside her now running Mercedes, her face flushed with embarrassment and confusion. The easy victory she had anticipated had turned into something else entirely, something that left her feeling exposed and uncertain in ways she wasn't accustomed to experiencing. The crowd began to disperse slowly, people returning to their own vehicles while continuing to discuss what they had just witnessed. Several employees approached Marcus directly, expressing their admiration and asking about his background. One woman, an engineer from the company's automotive division, was particularly impressed by his diagnostic skills and problem-solving approach. "That was incredible," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Jennifer Walsh, from the engineering department. I've seen certified mechanics take twice as long to identify problems half as complex as what you just solved." Marcus shook her hand politely, still holding Sophia with his other arm. "Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that." "No, really," Jennifer continued. "We work with automotive systems every day, and what you just did was genuinely impressive. Where did you learn to work on German engines like that?" "Here and there," Marcus replied modestly. "You pick things up over the years." But Jennifer wasn't the only one taking notice. Several other employees had gathered around, their earlier amusement replaced by genuine respect and curiosity. Word was spreading through the crowd that this wasn't just lucky guesswork, but actual expertise demonstrated under pressure. Within minutes, someone had posted the first clips online, and the response was immediate and overwhelming. The livestream that had started as workplace entertainment was being shared across platforms, generating thousands of comments and reactions from viewers who were drawn to the underdog story and impressed by Marcus's quiet dignity throughout the entire ordeal. Victoria remained by her car, watching the crowd celebrate a man she had intended to humiliate. The Mercedes purred smoothly beneath the hood, a testament to skills she had dismissed without consideration. Her phone began buzzing with notifications as the story spread across social media platforms, each alert a reminder of how badly she had misjudged the situation. The first news outlet picked up the story within an hour. Tech CEO challenges single dad to fix her car, you won't believe what happened next. The headline was sensationalized, but the underlying narrative was clear. A powerful executive had publicly mocked a working-class father and been proven wrong in spectacular fashion. By the next morning, the story had gone viral. The video clips showed Marcus's quiet competence contrasted against Victoria's condescending attitude, creating a narrative that resonated with millions of people who had experienced similar dismissive treatment based on their appearance or social status. Victoria found herself facing a public relations nightmare unlike anything she had encountered in her corporate career. The comment sections were brutal, filled with people sharing their own stories of being underestimated and dismissed by those in positions of power. The company's social media accounts were flooded with criticism, and several major clients had already reached out expressing concern about the negative publicity. Her assistant knocked on her office door at 9:30 that morning, carrying a stack of newspaper printouts and a tablet showing various news websites. "Ma'am, we need to discuss damage control. The phones haven't stopped ringing since 6 a.m. Victoria stared out her office window at the parking lot below, remembering the confident way Marcus had approached her car, the gentle way he had spoken to his daughter, the quiet dignity he had maintained even when surrounded by mockery. "Set up a meeting," she said quietly. "I want to speak with him." "The PR team? The lawyers? The board of directors?" "No," Victoria replied. "The man from last night. Marcus Johnson. Find him and ask if he'll come in to speak with me." By midweek, Marcus had received dozens of job offers from automotive companies, repair shops, and engineering firms across the country. The viral video had showcased his skills to millions of viewers, many of whom recognized genuine expertise when they saw it. But the offer that surprised him most came from Victoria herself. They met in her office on Thursday afternoon, the same imposing space where she had intimidated countless executives and negotiated million-dollar deals. But today, she felt small behind her massive desk, uncertain and uncomfortable in ways that money and power couldn't fix. Marcus entered wearing clean clothes but the same humble demeanor that had characterized their first encounter. He had declined to bring legal representation, despite advice from several attorneys who had contacted him about potential lawsuits for public humiliation and emotional distress. "Mr. Johnson," Victoria began, her voice lacking its usual commanding tone. "I want to apologize for Tuesday night. My behavior was unacceptable, and I take full responsibility for creating that situation." Marcus nodded quietly, waiting for her to continue. "I also want to offer you a position here at TechnoCore. We have several automotive consulting contracts that could benefit from someone with your expertise. The salary would be competitive, full benefits, and you'd be working with some of the best engineers in the industry. It was a generous offer, the kind of opportunity that could change everything for Marcus and Sophia. Corporate salary, professional respect, the chance to use his skills in ways that mattered beyond simple repairs and maintenance work. Marcus considered the proposal carefully, weighing the benefits against the costs, the opportunities against the compromises. Finally, he spoke. "I appreciate the offer, Miss Hartwell. I really do. But I have to ask you something first. Are you offering me this job because of my qualifications, or because you're trying to fix a public relations problem?" Victoria's cheeks reddened. The question cut straight to the heart of her motivations, exposing the calculated nature of her apparent generosity. "Because if it's the second one," Marcus continued, "then you're still making the same mistake you made in the parking lot. You're still seeing me as a problem to be managed, rather than a person to be respected." The silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of unspoken truths and uncomfortable realizations. "You know what I told my daughter that night?" Marcus asked. "I told her that sometimes adults say things they don't really mean. But the truth is, you meant every word you said out there. You meant it when you mocked me, when you assumed I was incompetent, when you turned my life into entertainment for your employees." Victoria started to respond, but Marcus held up his hand gently. "I'm not angry about it," he said. "I've dealt with worse, and I'll deal with worse in the future. But my daughter was watching. She was watching when you dismissed me, and she was watching when I proved you wrong. What do you think she learned from all that?" The question hung in the air between them. She learned that her daddy doesn't back down when people try to make him feel small. She learned that skill and knowledge matter more than expensive clothes or fancy titles. And she learned that sometimes, the people who look down on you are the ones who need to learn something from you. Marcus stood up from his chair, preparing to leave. "I don't need your job to validate my worth, Miss Hartwell. I don't need your apology to feel better about myself. What I needed was for my daughter to see that her father is someone she can be proud of, regardless of what anyone else thinks. And thanks to you, she got to see exactly that." Victoria watched him walk toward the door, realizing that she had fundamentally misunderstood the entire situation from beginning to end. "Mr. Johnson," she called out as he reached for the door handle. "What can I do to make this right?" Marcus posed, considering her question seriously. "Stop seeing people like me as problems to be solved or obstacles to be overcome," he said. "Start seeing us as human beings with value that exists whether you recognize it or not. And maybe, next time you see someone different from you, ask yourself what you might be able to learn from them instead of what you can teach them." He left her office with the same quiet dignity that had carried him through the entire ordeal, leaving Victoria alone with thoughts and realizations that would keep her awake for many nights to come. The story eventually faded from the news cycle, replaced by fresher controversies and newer viral sensations. But its impact lingered in unexpected ways. Marcus returned to his regular work, but now his phone rang regularly with calls from people who had seen the video and needed his expertise. Word spread through the community about his skills, and he began building the kind of reputation that his father had dreamed of decades earlier. Sophia never forgot the night she watched her daddy prove that being underestimated was just another challenge to overcome. She carried that lesson with her through school, through the inevitable moments when other children made assumptions about her based on their apartment address or her father's job title. Victoria's company implemented new policies about workplace, respect, and professional conduct. She began volunteering her time with organizations that provided job training for underemployed workers, discovering in the process that leadership sometimes meant learning rather than teaching. But the most important change was quieter, more personal. Marcus started every day knowing that his daughter had seen him succeed not because of his circumstances, but in spite of them. And that knowledge, more than any job offer or public recognition, gave him the confidence to keep building the life they both deserved. In the end, the Mercedes ran perfectly. The viral video eventually disappeared into the endless scroll of internet history, and life returned to its normal rhythms. But for those who had been there that evening, who had witnessed dignity triumph over arrogance and skill overcome prejudice, the memory lingered as proof that worth isn't determined by the clothes you wear or the car you drive. It's determined by who you are when the world is watching, and more importantly, who you choose to be when it matters most to the people who love you.